Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. We see all around us a very curious phenomenon. And if it was not something which is detestable, which is painful and agonizing, one would be amused. And one is always amused at times. But on second thoughts, on rumination, on recollection and remembrance, we feel ashamed of ourselves. Are we civilized? Are we cultured? In fact, are we even human beings when such incidents take place? And I'm referring to the absolute lack of civility, culture, decency in our public discourse. But what's shocking is that the political leaders who are supposed to be the role models, when they indulge in such talk, which is not only abusive, but is defamatory, uncultured, uncivilized, then one thinks, what are these people doing? Do they deserve to be our leaders? Do they really deserve to lead the country and society? Are they the role model which our children will follow? And if not so, why are we tolerating them? And it's not here in Canada that we find uncivilized, uncultured behavior. It's not only in India that we find this behavior which is finding expression day in and day out in the political discussions, in the TV debates, all over India, because the elections are going on over there. But we've seen earlier as well, when Trump was contesting the elections, the opposition to Trump and Trump himself at times, they indulged in those barbs and exchange which was demeaning, undesirable, and unsavory, to say the least. If they are comparing the size of the hands and the size of the sexual organs, how was that related to culture? When they were talking or discussing things which had no connection with either the political policy or the economy or the health of the nation, but were purely insulting diatribes. We would think that they are some citizens of those countries where there has been no civilization and man is still the brute ape. Same is happening in Canada. The political leaders cannot discuss anything until they are vituperative, until they are abusive. And Pakistan, not much better, maybe worse. And so is India. From the time the present Prime Minister was called the dealer in death and a broker of death, in fact, whose hands are washed with the blood, to being called a thief, and the abuses that are hurled on each candidate by the opponent make a sordid hearing. But the other party is no less, dredging up 30-year-old stories that had some reality, undoubtedly, But then do we live in the past all the time? Do we not get over? And is it civilized and culture to talk in those manners where we could easily gloss over and think about it? The question arises, why this decline and fall of civility? If you remember, there were times when being polite and being cultured was a hallmark of civilization, even with the opponents. The repartees between Churchill and his opponents, Chamberlain and others, between Gladstone and Disraeli, were marked with subtle wit, humor. For example, when somebody asked Disraeli, what's the difference between a tragedy and a disaster? He said, if Gladstone falls in Thames, it would be a tragedy. But if somebody rescues him, it will be a disaster. Or when the Irish MP kept on speaking, the first attempt at filibuster, and somebody interrupted him and said, would you come to an end? And he said, no, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the future generations. And then one of the members made a point. Well, if you don't hurry up, the future generations will be here. All said in a manner which was biting, but not abusive. When Churchill was accosted by the MP who said, I'm not in love with your face and your policies, and he said, lady, you are not going to come in contact with either. Or when the Countess told Churchill, if you were a husband, I'll poison you. And he said, well, if I was your husband, I'll drink it. So, or even Lincoln, imagine it, how civilized but full of humor. And now, the humor is replaced by abuse, insult, calumny. Why this degradation? Why this reversal back to the dark ages? The main issue is, A, we have become more self-centered. And we believe ends justify the means. We also believe that possibly being abusive is a sign of manliness. And that's why either women have started using F words. Look at what happened with the Democrat representative who called Donald Trump the president, MF. This is the depth of degradation to which we can sink. I'm not saying because the women said it, I'm saying that nobody should say. And not say it because they are saying, the children are learning. And this is a progressive fall. Once you start falling, there's no end to that fall. You keep on falling down and down and down and come back to the level from which you had come. Bestial, filthy. Possibly that's what you are. That's the first reason. The second reason is that the lack of education. By education, I do not mean the degrees, whether you are an MA or a PhD. Education basically means refinement, drawing out your hidden talents. That's the exact word of education is from the Latin word. To educate means to draw out your latent quality. Just heaping books on a donkey's back does not make donkey. an educated person. I don't mean literacy, I mean real education. And there's a lack of real education. There's lack of empathy. So selfishness with lack of empathy, with lack of education, and lack of human values. That's the most important thing. You see, in fact, this materialistic world has given us many things, but it has taken away many things as well. It has taken away from us our human values. For us today, it's important to have material things and not things which matter. That is being human. And that is the reason that it's reflected in our politicians, in our leaders who are unable to get over their crass, bestial ambition. The worst possible fall has been in USA, India, Pakistan, and in third world African countries, where newly free and nascent people came and they could not bide opposition. They couldn't tolerate different points of view. In fact, they couldn't tolerate anybody should snatch away their profits. They were guilty of corruption, and they knew that to preserve their corrupt values, they have to avoid the sensible people coming back in power. Otherwise, they might have to pay through their nose. That's what happened in all over Asia, all over Africa. But some countries have maintained their decency. Look at Japan. Look at Thailand. Look at Bhutan, where the kings themselves relinquished without any outside force their authority to the people, and the dignity and the decency that was maintained all over remained the hallmark of those societies. We call Bhutan a backward society, but the happiest country in the world. And it is happy because of its consistent adherence to the ethical values. And it has not allowed human values to be subverted by greed, by avarice, by indecency. When the head of a state and the head of the government is derided or insulted, it insults the whole nation. And that's why it's a crime in Thailand to criticize the king. It's a high treason to criticize the king in Japan. It should be high treason. You criticize. I mean, if there's something wrong, we have a right to criticize, but criticism can be done in a manner that does not denigrate ourselves. When we are losing the civility, we are losing our human dignity. The person who indulges it does not only insult the opponent, he insults himself or herself as well. It's a degradation of self. And I'm more concerned when it happens with the political leaders because, as I said, they are the role models. And the role model, if that's bad, if that is not appropriate, then the decline is very fast. As a matter of fact, we used to say as civilization increases, culture recedes. That used to be said. But now it's happening the other way. Both are going back. As materially we progress, we go back in civilization and we go back in culture. As a matter of fact, we go back on our basic humanity. Are the political leaders listening? Most probably not. And they don't want to listen because they know that the people will tolerate them. So it's up to the people to see that any leader who is abusive, who is impolite, who indulges in such activities which are highly insulting, which are depraved, undignified, should be thrown in the dunghill. They are gutter snipes and they deserve to be in gutters. Would you do so? That's a challenge for you. Tell them we will not tolerate indecent, undignified behavior. We can tolerate difference of opinion, but you don't have to be disagreeable while you are disagreeing. Thank you.